They called her trash, not to her face, never to her face, but she knew. She knew from the way the receptionist sprayed perfume the moment she walked past. She knew from the whispers behind coffee mugs and the fake coughs when she entered the elevator. Helen had been cleaning the floors of Westbridge Holdings for almost 2 decades. Same building, same uniform, same mop, same silence. But nothing ever really changed except one thing. Every year, people looked down on her a little more. She wasn't just a janitor. She was the janitor, the ghost in the hallway, some joked. Don't make eye contact. She'll curse your promotion, others whispered with cruel laughter. One time, a new intern asked aloud in the break room, "Why is that woman still here? Doesn't she have anywhere else to rot?" No one corrected him, not even the HR manager sitting 2 seats away. Helen had learned not to flinch. But every insult, every look, it carved another line into her face. Not from age. From egg dot at 6 o'clock a.m. sharp. She'd arrived before even security. She cleaned desks she wasn't allowed to touch. She polished glass walls that reflected nothing but her exhaustion. No one noticed, but they would if she missed a spot. One Monday morning, she came in coughing. The cold air had set into her lungs. Her hands shook as she lifted the mop. A junior manager, Lauren, 28, blonde, ruthlessly spotted her and scowled. "If you're sick, don't come in. We don't need to catch your poverty too." Poverty, that word echoed louder than the squeak of her mop. Helen looked down. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her voice would have cracked. In the basement, behind the boiler room, was her locker. Not a real one, just a metal cabinet no one claimed. Inside were 3 things. A small photo of a baby boy, a broken gold watch that no longer ticked, and a property deed folded so many times it looked like tissue. But no one ever opened her locker, because no one cared enough to wonder who Helen was. Only what she smelled like. That afternoon, disaster struck. The CEO was arriving for a surprise visit. Everyone panicked. Desks were wiped. Windows were washed. People who never spoke to her suddenly shoved her mop toward the restroom. "Make it sparkle," one man hissed. "Or don't come back. Tomorrow?" She did. In fact, she stayed 2 hours after closing to finish the job. At 10:38 p.m. While wiping the sink, she overheard voices in the hallway. "Why hasn't she died yet? Old witch probably lives here. I swear I saw her sleeping in the supply closet. Bet she steals snacks from the vending machine too." She didn't turn around. She just stared at her reflection in the mirror, and for the first time in years, she hated who she saw, not because of how she looked, but because she let them treat her like this. She walked home that night, a 70-minute walk. She couldn't afford the bus, not because she was poor, but because she was testing something. That night, she took out the property deed again. It said, "Owner, Helen Militars, Whitlock Property, 12 Crestmore Avenue, building type, commercial, 7-floor size." Westbridge Holdings had been renting from her all these years, and they didn't even know it because she never let them. Why? Because Helen believed in character. She believed that if people treated the lowest person with dignity, they deserved to rise. And if they spat on the one who swept their floor, they didn't deserve a single step higher. She smiled bitterly, folded the paper again, and whispered, "Tomorrow, maybe I'll remind them who pays the rent." The first time they laughed at her, Helen thought it was just stress. She'd been mopping the marble floor of the 5th floor corridor, the one outside the creative department, when a group of interns passed by. Young, overconfident, loud. She caught the tail end of their sentence, like some horror movie janitor. "Bet she sleeps in that mop closet." There was a pause. Then the whole group burst into laughter. She didn't turn. She didn't flinch. But the mop handle in her hands stiffened. Helen told herself not to care. She had done this for too long to care. But the next day, someone had drawn on the janitor locker a stick figure with long hair, hunched back, holding a mop, labeled "Toilet Witch." It was done in permanent marker. She stared at it for a full minute before opening the door, not even trying to clean it. Over the next weeks, the jokes escalated. Someone made a TikTok. It was only 9 seconds long. It showed Helen slowly walking down a hallway, pushing her cart. The caption read, "POV, the ghost that haunts the office at night." They added eerie music, the kind you hear in horror trailers. It got to 100,000 views. In 3 days, people shared it in private office chats. Some added laughing emojis. Some used the word creepy. One person wrote, "Why doesn't she just die already?" Helen didn't have TikTok, but people whispered loud enough for her to hear. They stopped seeing her as a woman. She had become a mascot for their cruelty. Something they bonded over, the woman who worked through Christmas, who had never taken a single sick day, who once returned a $500 wallet with every dollar still inside, reduced to a meme. One afternoon, she walked into the women's restroom. 3 girls from marketing were inside, fixing their makeup. They saw her and immediately stopped talking. Then one said, loud enough for the others to hear, "God, what is that smell?" Another added, "She smells like expired sadness." The third, "She didn't say anything. She just sprayed her perfume 4, 5, 6 times until Helen left." Helen stood outside the restroom, holding her breath. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She felt something colder than tears, resentment. But she pushed it down like she always had. She always believed people would see her one day, see her for who she really was. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow, but someday, 2 nights later, something happened that cracked her. Helen was in the elevator, headed to the basement, when it stopped on the 3rd floor. A group of employees entered. It was late past 9:30 p.m. They looked at her like she was part of the wall. One girl started recording a selfie video. Helen could see herself in the background of the screen. "Guys," the girl whispered in mock horror, "look who I'm trapped in the elevator with. If I die, tell our." The others laughed loudly. Another voice added, "Zoom in on the mock goddess." The girl flipped the camera to Helen, zoomed in mockingly. Helen stood frozen, eyes fixed on the door. She didn't say a word, but when she got off, she heard the ping of their airdrop. The video had already been shared. The next morning, she found her cart moved. Someone had left used tissues all over it. A sticky note was attached. "To our dear hallway phantom, thanks for the trauma." She cleaned in silence. Again, like she had done for 20 years. That week, HR held a mental wellness day. They passed around cupcakes, gave away stress balls, told people to be kind always. Helen wasn't invited. Of course, she watched through the glass door as the others laughed inside. One woman mimed her mop walk. A man at the back pretended to cough and spray perfume. They all laughed. It was a Thursday evening when Helen sat alone in the supply closet, the only place she could sit that wasn't claimed. She reached into her coat and pulled out the deed. Again, unfolded it, stared. Her name, the building's address, legal seal, tax number, all valid. She wasn't a joke. She was the landlord of every person who had ever mocked her. And they had no idea. She folded the paper, closed her eyes. And that's when her phone vibrated. It was an old friend from another city. He'd sent a screenshot. The elevator video, the one where she was filmed, had been posted to LinkedIn. Someone from the office had uploaded it as a joke. "Fun late night at Westbridge. Elevator ghost strikes again." The comments? "OMG, is she still alive? She makes me wanna quit corporate and become a monk. Hire an exorcist, please." But one comment stood out. It was from a verified user. A name she hadn't heard in 17 years. And the comment was just one sentence. "Is that Mrs. Whitlock?" Helen stared at the name. She blinked. Her hands began to tremble, not from age, from memory, and suddenly, her silence was no longer enough. Helen didn't sleep that night. She sat at the small kitchen table of her 1-bedroom apartment, eyes locked on her cracked phone screen. The comment was still there. "Is that Mrs. Whitlock?" Simple, polite, but devastatingly specific. She hadn't heard anyone call her that in 17 years. Most people didn't even know her last name. At work, she was just the janitor. The ghost, that thing with the mop. But this name was real, full, formal, spoken with recognition, maybe even respect. The profile that left it belonged to Julian E. Someone with the word founder next to his name. Helen clicked the name. Her eyes widened. Julian Everett, CEO of Everett Engineering, Boston, Massachusetts. She remembered. It had been 2 decades since she last saw him, back when he was just Julian, the pale little boy in apartment 302. The one with a broken arm and a stutter. He'd lived next door to her brother. Helen had taken care of him after school, taught him to read, cooked for him when his parents were too drunk to function. She remembered giving him her old laptop to learn HTML. She remembered buying him a winter coat from her tips. And now, he was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm. Her hand trembled as she typed a reply. But before she could send anything, another notification appeared. Someone at her office had replied to Julian's comment. "Yeah, that's our office, which we're making her a meme." She paused. Did Julian see it? She clicked refresh. Yes. He had replied. Delete this. 3 words. Cold. Sharp. Non-negotiable. And the original post. Gone. The next morning at Westbridge, whispers floated like smoke. Who took down the video? Someone's account got locked. HR's involved, now big mess. Helen said nothing. She arrived early, as always, and headed to the supply room. But something felt off. She opened the door and froze. All her cleaning supplies were gone. Every mop, bucket, and chemical bottle removed. In their place was a cardboard box. Inside, a single cloth rack, a spray bottle of water, and a pink note. Upgrade. Witchcraft Edition Love. Floor 5. She stood there for a long time. Longer than she should have, not because she didn't know what to do, but because she finally felt it. That tipping point, the moment the weight was no longer tolerable. For 20 years she had endured, but this was cruel, calculated. Cowardly. She didn't cry, but her hands, those same hands that had cleaned vomit, broken glass, and worse, they shook. Not from fear, from rage. A maintenance worker, Alvin, came down to grab a ladder. He spotted her and froze. Helen, you okay? She didn't answer right away, but her voice, when it came, was calm. Do you still have the contact for the building lease agent? Alvin blinked. Yeah. Why? Helen looked him dead in the eye. I need to make an appointment. She left early that day. First time in 7 years. No one noticed. Or so she thought, but in the HR office, something was brewing. Lauren, the blonde department head from marketing, had seen the comment thread on LinkedIn. She had noticed the name, Julian Everett, and she had Googled it. What she found made her stomach sink. Wait, why would he know our janitor? She printed out his company bio, made notes, started digging into Helen's work file. Then she saw something that didn't make sense. Helen's employee ID had a different last name on the paperwork than her bank info. And the address listed wasn't even current. It was like someone had deliberately kept their real identity hidden. Lauren's curiosity turned into unease. She called up her management. Meanwhile, Helen was walking. She walked past her usual bus stop, past the grocery store, past the apartment blocks, and into the legal offices of Carter and Stone, a firm that had handled her brother's estate decades ago. She hadn't been back in 17 years, but when she gave her name at the front desk, the receptionist blinked. Yeah, Mrs. Whitlock. She nodded. Please wait here. Mr. Stone will see you. When she entered the office, the lawyer stood. I was wondering when you'd come back, he said. Helen sat down quietly. They don't know, she said simply. He nodded. You kept your word. But why now? Helen pulled out the pink sticky note from her pocket, the one with the words Witchcraft Edition. She unfolded it, placed it on the table. Because they stopped seeing me as human. The lawyer leaned forward. So what do you want to do? Helen was silent for a long time. Then softly, I want them to understand who I am. Not for revenge, but because I'm tired of being silent. As she left the office, the wind picked up. A street cleaner passed her, a young man whistling. Unaware of anything but his broom, Helen paused, watching him for a moment. She saw herself 20 years ago, invisible, expendable, useful, but unloved. She turned, walked back to the street. This time, she wasn't heading home. She was going to the place where her real name still meant something. At the same time, back at Westbridge, a director burst into a meeting. Check this, he hissed. Someone just updated the property record on our lease. It now says the owner is Helen Whitlock. Monday morning. It was raining, the kind of slow, cold rain that seeped into your bones. Helen arrived earlier than usual. She wasn't wearing her uniform. She wasn't carrying her cart. She wasn't heading to the supply room. She walked through the front doors of Westbridge Holdings carrying a black leather folder and something even heavier. Resolve. The receptionist blinked twice. Hi. Yeah? Not scheduled for anything today, are you? Helen simply replied. I'm here to observe. Observe what? The woman asked, confused. Helen didn't answer. Instead, she sat down in the corner of the lobby where no one ever looked and began to take notes. Every interaction, every face, every whisper. Upstairs in the executive wing, the mood was shifting. Lauren, the marketing head, paced in front of a whiteboard. This is bad. This is really bad. She held up the printed property record. It clearly showed. Registered. Owner. Helen Militers. Whitlock status. Active. No liens. Verified. The CO. A man named Thomas with an expensive haircut and a history of ignoring people like Helen scoffed. She must have stolen the deed or something. This has to be fraud, Lauren shot back. She's been cleaning our toilets for 2 decades, Thomas. Why would she pretend to own the place if she wasn't serious? He shrugged. She's probably delusional. Poor people get weird when they're old. Meanwhile, in the HR office, someone dug out her employment file. They found nothing strange, just one thing. Helen's emergency contact had been removed years ago. No next of kin, no social media, no complaints. Just one note on the file, written in pen from her first year. Quiet, compliant, invisible. That note stayed there for 19 years, down in the lobby. Helen observed everything. People walking past her like she didn't exist. People gossiping near her. Not realizing she was listening, she wrote in her notebook, Day 1, they still don't look at me. She didn't speak to anyone. She didn't scold. She didn't threaten, but she watched, and those who had laughed loudest didn't notice. That afternoon, Helen went to the maintenance wing. Alvin, the quiet handyman who once helped her lift a broken vending machine, was working on a light fixture. Hey, she said gently. He turned and smiled. You're not in uniform. No, she replied. I'm. Between rows, Alvin laughed. Wish I was. She pulled a small folded piece of paper from her folder and handed it to him. He unfolded it, a handwritten note. Would you like to work for me, not just around me? Alvin looked up, eyes wide. Wait, is this? She put a finger to her lips. Not yet. Just think about it. That evening, Helen returned to the 7th floor where the executive boardroom was. She walked past the meeting in progress, unnoticed, and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. For 10 minutes, she simply looked out at the skyline, the same skyline she had once looked at while scrubbing floors. Wondering what it felt like to stand tall, she turned to leave, but someone called out, Helen? She turned. It was Janice, the elderly front desk woman who'd been at the company almost as long as Helen. They rarely spoke, but Janice walked over quietly. They're talking about you, she whispered. They think you're planning something. Helen smiled gently. What do you think? Janice hesitated. Then softly, I think it's about time. Later that night, Lauren and Thomas the execs met in secret. She's playing us, Lauren hissed. She's not cleaning anymore. She's watching. Then fire her. Thomas growled. We can't, Lauren snapped. If she's really the owner or connected to them, we could get sued. So what do? We wait. We wait for her to slip. The next morning, Helen wore her uniform again. She mopped the lobby like nothing happened. People started whispering less, but one intern, Riley, who had secretly always admired Helen's quiet dignity, walked over and handed her a coffee. For you, he said awkwardly. It's on me. She looked at him for a long moment. Why? He fumbled. Just because I see you. I always have. Helen nodded. She took the cup, wrote in her notebook. Day 2. One person saw me. That afternoon, Lauren called a meeting, strictly upper management. Okay, this ends now, she declared. We dig everything. Family records, lawsuits, real estate connections. You think she's bluffing? Someone asked. Lauren stared at the folder. No, I think she's dangerous. And on that same evening, Helen walked into an old post office, one that hadn't changed since the 80s. She handed the clerk a sealed envelope. It was addressed to Westbridge Holdings Lease Department. Attention, legal team. Woman weighed it, stamped it, mailed it. The letter inside, just 6 words. Let's talk about your tenancy. The legal department opened the envelope at 9:17. It was a simple white letter. No header, no signature, no logo, just one line, typed in bold. Let's talk about your tenancy, and an email address. MW entity at Proton Mail. Comfy brought it to the CEO within 5 minutes. Thomas looked at the paper and scoffed. Anonymous. Probably a prank, but Lauren wasn't so sure. We checked the building records again. I want full confirmation, names, signatures, everything. At 10:42 am. HR quietly called Helen into a small room. The woman conducting the meeting, Amanda, was trying to be polite, but her voice had that polished fear of someone trained in crisis control. Helen, we just wanted to check in. You've been working here for, oh wow, 20 years, haven't you? Helen nodded. Amanda continued. There's been some, confusion lately. Your name came up in some property records, and we just want to clarify. Make sure there are no misunderstandings. Helen looked at her calmly. Are you asking if I own the building? Amanda blinked. No, I mean, not exactly. We just want to ensure your paperwork is up to date. Helen tilted her head slightly. I've cleaned your restrooms, hallways, and conference rooms for 7,300 days. And you're worried about my paperwork? Amanda swallowed. We just want to be sure everyone is where they should be. I agree, Helen said softly. Everyone should be where they belong, and she stood up. Let me know if you find out where that is. She left the room without another word. That afternoon, something new happened. For the first time in 20 years, a department had sent her an email.it read. Helen, we'd love your input on building maintenance scheduling. Please drop by when convenient. Lauren T. Helen read it. Didn't reply, but she printed the email, folded it carefully, and slid it into her black leather folder. Back in the executive office, a new narrative began forming. Thomas called a private meeting. She's playing mind games. Lauren crossed her arms. And she's doing it well. Fine, Thomas said. Let's flip the script. Let's remind everyone that she's just a help. The next morning, Helen arrived to find a small plaque screwed onto her cart.it read. Property of Westbridge Holdings custodial staff, only subtle. Petty. Intentional. That day, several people refused to look at her. One manager even walked around her mop bucket dramatically pretending to gag. At 2:30 p.m. Someone accidentally spilled coffee all over the floor right after she cleaned it. At 4:00 p.m., someone turned off the lights while she was still inside the restroom. She stood in the dark for 5 minutes before finding the switch. When she came out, she didn't say a word, but people were watching. Not everyone was cruel. The intern, Riley, approached her again. I saw what they did. It wasn't right. She looked at him. What did you do about it? He hesitated. I didn't know what to do. Helen nodded. That's what they count on. That evening, she went to the rooftop. The building buzzed below her, screens flashing, elevators dinging, voices echoing through concrete. She looked down and whispered, let them keep pushing. They don't know how close they are. Meanwhile, the legal team got a reply from the anonymous email. One line. Your lease ends in 31 days. Let's discuss terms. Attached. A scanned, notarized copy of the building title, signed, stamped, authenticated. Owner. Helen Militers. Whitlock Thomas slammed the folder shut. This is insane. Lauren shook her head. This is real. We have to get ahead of this, he snapped. Damage control. Spin. Maybe we offer her a check to walk away. Offer the landlord a buyout. Lauren nearly laughed. She's been here 20 years. If this is a power play, we've already lost. That night, Helen cleaned the 5th floor again, the same floor where the meme video had been filmed. As she wiped the glass wall, she saw her reflection, but this time, she didn't see a woman being mocked. She saw a woman about to make history. And as she turned the corner, she saw a printed copy of the meme video pinned to the bulletin board. Someone had written in Sharpie, "Still here." Helen stared at it, took it down, folded it neatly, and wrote on the back, "Not for long." Helen didn't bring her cart on Friday. No mop, no gloves, no disinfectant bottle. Instead, she walked in wearing a simple charcoal grey coat, buttoned all the way up. In her hand, a slim black case. Inside, a single sheet of paper, 3 words, and a date. At 9:00 a.m. As the rest of the office buzzed with deadlines, Helen sat at the window ledge on the mezzanine. Just between the marketing floor and HR.it was the space people used for coffee breaks. But no one sat near her that day. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Most were confused. She had become something too difficult to categorize. No longer invisible. Not quite untouchable. Just unknown. And in a corporate world obsessed with clarity, the unknown is terrifying. Upstairs, Lauren stood with her arms crossed at the boardroom window, staring down at Helen. Why is she just sitting there? Thomas grunted. She's playing us. She already has Thomas, Lauren snapped. We're reacting. She's not. Legal had confirmed everything, the scanned deed, the updated city registry. Even the tax filings were clean and dated back to decades. No fake. No fraud. Helen Whitlock was, by every measure, the legal owner of the building, and they'd mocked her for 2 decades. Lauren tapped her nails on the table. We need a narrative. Something public. Something that makes us look like victims. Thomas glared. I'm not apologizing to a janitor. You may not have to, Lauren said coldly. She might not give us the chance. At 10:42 a.m., the fire alarm rang. Not a drill, a real alarm. Panic spread quickly, clacking heels, shouting managers, files abandoned mid-print. Employees swarmed down the stairwell. Helen stood quietly and waited near the side exit. Someone bumped her. Another cursed at her for being in the way. She didn't react. Outside, people huddled in the parking lot, shivering. No fire. False alarm. Someone triggered it from the second floor. Security ran checks, reviewed logs, but the system had been accessed using a master code. Only 3 people had it. None of them claimed responsibility, and none of them were Helen. But while everyone stood outside for 45 minutes, a single document was quietly slipped under the boardroom door upstairs. Inside a black envelope, no name, no logo, just one printed sentence, 30 days, and beneath it, the date of lease expiration. By 2 o'clock p.m., Helen had returned to her spot in the lobby, reading a book. In old paperback, corners bent, title faded, but when Lauren walked by, she recognized it instantly. The Art of War. That night, Janice, the front desk receptionist, sat beside Helen after her shift. They hadn't spoken in over a week. Janice hesitated, then asked, "Are you going to take it away?" Helen looked at her. "Take what?" "The building." Helen didn't answer. Instead, she turned a page in her book. "Did you ever laugh at me, Janice?" The woman's lips trembled. "No, then you don't need to worry. Back at home." Helen opened the folder. Inside was a single sticky note, one she'd kept for over a decade. It had been taped to her locker in year 3. "Your life smells like bleach. No name, just hatred." She never reported it. She just folded it, tucked it into the back of her notebook, and carried it every day since. That night, she burned it in the sink, watched the paper curl, watched the ink disappear. Meanwhile, upstairs, Lauren got a call from someone she didn't expect. Julian Everett. Yes, that Julian. He didn't waste time. "Is it true?" "That depends," Lauren said. "Is what true? Did your staff film her? Mock her? Post her online?" Silence. Julian spoke again. "Do you know who she is?" Lauren stayed quiet. "I do," he said, "and I owe her everything." He hung up. Lauren sat back, heart pounding. Thomas stormed in minutes later. "Did you send the offer?" She refused it. "How?" Lauren turned her laptop to show the email. A single sentence in reply to their $250,000 buyout proposal. "You think I'm here for money?" The next morning, Helen showed up wearing a soft blue blouse. No uniform. No badge. She walked up to Alvin, the quiet maintenance man who'd once helped her when her mop handle snapped mid-shift. She handed him an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Your new contract," she said. "As head of facilities. Report directly to me." His eyes widened. "Are you serious?" She smiled. "I've never been more." By noon, whispers turned into questions. Why isn't she cleaning anymore? Why did Riley get reassigned to logistics? Why did Helen call a meeting in conference room B? That last one hit hard. An email went out. Mandatory staff session 3 o'clock p.m. Confer. Be facilitator. H. Whitlock. People stared at their screens. Some thought it was a mistake. Some assumed it was a joke. But at 3 o'clock p.m., the room was packed, and Helen walked in, holding a microphone. She waited until every snicker died, waited until Thomas and Lauren arrived, smug in the back. Then she spoke, calm, even. "This isn't about power, or money, or revenge. It's about value." She looked around the room at every face that had avoided her eyes for 20 years. "You watched me clean your coffee spills, your bathroom floors, your messes, but not once. Not once did you ask me my name." Silence. "I was never invisible. You just chose not to see." She pulled a document from her folder, held it up. "This is the deed to this building. My name is Helen Whitlock, and starting next month, I decide who stays." Silence. That was the sound after Helen said it. "My name is Helen Whitlock, and starting next month, I decide who stays." No one moved. Some stared blankly. Others looked at the ground. One woman, the junior assistant from legal who had once dropped food and made Helen clean it without apology, started to tear up. No one laughed. No one whispered, because this time they heard her. Helen placed the deed on the center table. Then she looked around the room and said, "I've made a list." Panic swept like cold wind. People shifted in their seats. She continued. "Over the past few weeks, I've observed, listened, watched. I've seen who showed kindness and who only showed their teeth when it was safe." She opened a thin black folder. Inside, pages filled with names, typed, sorted, not alphabetically but by character. Lauren stood up. "This is unacceptable," she said. You can't threaten people with termination based on personal feelings. Helen looked at her. Is that not what you've done for 20 years? Aye, when you laughed at the janitor. When you filmed her. When you told interns I smelled like expired sadness. Was that professional? Lauren flushed. Red. That was taken out of context. Helen turned a page in the folder. Page 12. Time-stamped. Quoted. Witnessed. Shall we keep going? Lauren sat down. Hard. Then Helen spoke louder. This isn't about revenge. It's about resetting the standard, because if this is the culture of your company, then this company doesn't deserve this building. Everyone went still. Even Thomas started at 3:30 p.m. The meeting ended. Helen left the folder on the table. I won't ask for apologies, she said at the door. But I will expect change, as people filed out. Some nodded. Some couldn't meet her eyes. But others, Riley, Janice, Alvin, stood taller dotted for 15 p.m. Helen returned to the lobby. Janice was waiting for her. They're all shaken. They should be, Helen replied. You have their attention. Now. Helen sat behind the front desk, her desk now. She opened a notebook dotted to the top of the page. Keep remove unclear. She began writing names. Riley Keith intern, who brought her coffee, who said, I see you. Janice Keith, only one who never laughed. Alvin Keith, one who always helped. Then came the others. Thomas Removecro, arrogant, unapologetic. Lauren Removetro faced, manipulative, mocked people below her. And then a third list. Amanda H.R. unclear. She smiled. She apologized. But she still turned a blind eye. Kevin I.T. unclear never mocked her, but never stopped others either. Helen looked at those names for a long time. Complicity still guilty, she murmured. The next morning, emails were sent. Subject: meeting request. Whitlock office recipients. Selected individuals. Some were invited for contract renewals. Some were asked to vacate their positions within 30 days. Some received nothing. A silence louder than rejection. Thomas barged into the boardroom at 10 o'clock a.m. This is madness, he shouted. You can't just kick people out. You are not God. Helen sat calmly at the head of the table. For the first time in her life, she sat there, not cleaning it, not standing in the corner, sitting at the head. She looked him in the eyes. No, I'm not God. I'm the landlord, and I don't keep tenants who rot the walls. Later that afternoon, a group of employees formed an impromptu delegation. 3 of them, 2 men, 1 woman, the same trio who had once laughed when Helen dropped a trash bag and banana peel rolled out. They stood outside her office, shuffling nervously. We're here to apologize, one began. We didn't know who you were. Helen raised an eyebrow. And if I wasn't the owner? They looked at each other. Well, then maybe we wouldn't be here, Helen nodded. That's the problem. She didn't say anything else. Didn't offer forgiveness, didn't shake hands, just watched them leave heads down. Meanwhile, Lauren was spiraling. She sent out dozens of emails. There's still time to fix this. We can offer her more. She wants power, give it to her. But no response came. Not from Helen. Not from legal. Not from her allies, who were now jumping ship one by one. Riley, the intern, walked into Helen's office just before closing. You're making a lot of changes, he said softly. Helen looked up. Am I? People are scared. Good. Fear teaches faster than comfort. But they also need to believe in something, Riley added. Helen nodded. Then let's give them something worth believing in. That night, as lights turned off and the building emptied, Helen stood at the window of her office, the same glass she had once wiped with bleach-stained gloves. She looked down at the city, her city, and said aloud, Tomorrow, we rebuild. Day 1 of the rebuild. No announcement. No press release. No drama. Helen simply walked into the office at 7:30 a.m., wearing a navy blue jacket, hair pulled neatly back, and a folder marked Culture Protocol Phase I. By 8 o'clock a.m., she had personally unlocked every floor with her master key. By 8:15 a.m., the cleaning schedule was handed off to a new team. Alvin was now in charge with better pay, full benefits, and the freedom to hire who he wanted. By 8:30 a.m., coffee was delivered to the reception desk, not for Helen, but for Janice, who'd manned the desk for 17 years without a single proper raise. Janice cried. No one's ever done that before. Helen smiled. Then we start with that. At 9 o'clock a.m., Helen gathered 12 employees in the common room, all different. Intern, engineer, accountant, designer, HR. They were the ones she'd marked. Not loud, not perfect, but quietly kind. She stood in front of them with nothing but a whiteboard marker and a question. What would this company look like if we stopped treating silence as weakness? Silence. Then Riley, the intern, spoke first. We'd stop overlooking people like you. Helen nodded. And what else? The ideas came slowly at first, then faster. By 10 o'clock am, the whiteboard was full. Mentorship by choice. Not hierarchy. Performance reviews include peer respect. Not just numbers. No anonymous cruelty tolerated online or off personal days allowed without guilt. Cleaning staff are staff. Period. At 11:20 am. A man walked in uninvited. Thomas. His suit was wrinkled. His voice bitter. What is this? Group therapy? Helen didn't answer, but Riley did. No, it's what leadership looks like when you stop screaming and start listening. Thomas laughed. You think this building will run on kindness? Helen walked over to the coffee pot, poured a cup, handed it to him. Try it. It's free today. He didn't take it. He left at noon. Helen pulled Janice into the old HR office. It had been stripped bare, just a desk, a chair, and the company values plaque from 2009 still hanging crooked. She pointed to the plaque. Do you believe any of this? Janice shook her head. They hung it up and never looked back. Helen took it off the wall, snapped it in two, dropped it in the bin. Good. Now we'll write new ones and actually live them. Outside, in the break area, Lauren was holding court, surrounded by employees unsure of what to believe. She spoke carefully. She's not qualified. She's emotional. This isn't how business works, one of the newer engineers asked. Then why is everything already working better? Lauren's jaw tensed. It's temporary. She'll lose control. Another voice chimed in. You mean like how she lost control of the building you used to manage? The group scattered before she could respond. That afternoon, Helen held one-on-one meetings. And no assistants, no scripts. She asked each person only two questions. What did you see happen here? What did you do about it? Some were honest. Some cried. Some lied and didn't realize Helen had kept everything: time logs, witness statements, private emails forwarded by whistleblowers. She didn't confront them, just listened, took notes, moved their names quietly on her board. For 15 p.m. She called a second all-staff meeting. This time, there was no shouting, no accusations, no printed lists, just a screen with 5 bullet points. The new rules of Westbridge Holdings. We treat no one as invisible. We reward empathy as much as execution. We do not weaponize silence. We clean up our own messes, literal and moral. We do not forget names. She paused on the last one, let it sit, then said, You forgot mine. For 20 years. I won't forget yours. No threat in her voice, no anger, just truth. After the meeting, Helen stood alone by the elevator. A young analyst approached her. Carla, who once filmed the TikTok video. I want to say something, Carla said, voice small. Helen looked at her, waited. What we did was wrong. We laughed because we thought you'd never be anything more than. She trailed off. Helen raised her brow. Then what? Carla swallowed. Then nothing. Helen didn't respond for a long time. Then she reached into her folder and handed Carla a sheet. Volunteer program. Homeless shelters. 2 weeks. Start tomorrow. Why? Carla asked, confused. Because if you thought I was nothing, it's time you saw what nothing looks like up close. At 7 o'clock p.m., long after most had left, Helen remained. She cleaned her own new office, wiped the glass, polished the desk. Not because she had to, because she always had. And because some habits don't mean smallness, they mean respect for space, for people, for the ground that carries you. Before leaving, she updated her masterboard. Riley promoted Alvin, department head Janice, retirement bonus plus transition advisor Lauren, contract under review Thomas, eviction process initiated, and then she wrote one final line at the top. Culture isn't rules, it's memory. They were the last two. Lauren, Thomas, the faces of arrogance, the ones who'd rolled their eyes when Helen passed, the ones who'd called her that thing in meetings, the ones who said, if you want a raise, learn how to use a computer, not a mop. Now, they were waiting outside her office. Lauren paced. Thomas stared at his phone, jaw locked. Inside, Helen sat behind her desk, flipping pages, contracts, memos, security logs, and a plain white envelope. At 10:01 am, she buzzed. Janice, send them in. They entered, side by side, but not in step. Lauren walked a beat ahead, calculated. Thomas walked heavy, annoyed. They sat without being asked. Helen didn't offer them coffee, didn't ask how they were. She let silence fill the room, let it sting. Finally, Helen looked up. Do you know why you're here? Lauren spoke first. To discuss our contracts, I assume. Helen raised one brow. Interesting. I assumed you'd come to apologize, Thomas scoffed. We're not here to beg, Helen nodded slowly. Good. Because I wouldn't accept it. She opened the white envelope, pulled out 2 documents. One marked, Severance Agreement, Thomas Vieck. The other, Probation Review, Lauren Kayek. Lauren blinked. Wait, probation? Helen's tone didn't change. You have 30 days to prove your value not in results, but in respect. If by then, your department reflects the new culture, you stay. If not, you're gone. Lauren started to speak, but Helen held up a hand. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for your team. Because some of them still believe people can change. Lauren's lips tightened, but she nodded. Understood. Then Helen turned to Thomas. He didn't look at the paper, didn't even blink. I built this company, he muttered. Helen didn't smile. You built fear. I'm tearing it down. He leaned forward. You think you'll survive without people like me? Helen leaned forward too. I survived despite people like you. Then she slid the document toward him. Your severance is generous, but your access ends today. Security is waiting downstairs. Thomas stood up slowly. This is a mistake. Helen's eyes didn't flinch. So was letting you stay this long. He stormed out. Didn't slam the door. Didn't speak to anyone. Just disappeared like a virus finally flushed from the system. Lauren remained. She stared at the paper. Why give me a chance? Helen answered honestly. Because I saw you hesitate. You didn't stop the cruelty. But once, just once, you looked ashamed. I believe shame can grow into accountability. After they left, Riley came in. Is it done? Helen nodded. One fired, one watched. How do you feel? She thought for a long time, then said quietly, tired. That afternoon, the building felt lighter. People spoke softer, smiled more, held doors open. Someone brought cookies to the break room. No occasion, no name, just a note. For the people who stayed and chose better. At 5:00 p.m. Janice walked into Helen's office. You made it through the list. Helen didn't answer at first. She looked out the window. The city was gold in the evening sun. No, she said softly. The list made me. Janice placed something on the desk. A photo. Frame.it was from Helen's first week. 2 decades ago. She was younger, exhausted, hunched over a mop bucket. No one in the background looked at her. No one helped. It was a photo of invisibility. Helen stared at it, then flipped it over. Janice had written. She never left. She just waited to be seen. That night, Helen walked the entire building. One last time. Floor by floor, she opened doors, checked lights, fixed a crooked sign on the 3rd floor. She saw a janitor, a new hire Alvin brought in. He jumped when he saw her. Ma'am, I was just. Helen stopped him. You're doing good work. He blinked. No one's ever said that to me. Helen smiled. Then I'll be the first. At the rooftop, she stood under the stars, alone. 20 years of footsteps, 20 years of dirt, 20 years of being laughed at, stepped over, ignored. And now, she wasn't a ghost anymore. She was the foundation. Before she left, she wrote one sentence on the back of her office door. Not for anyone else, just for her. You don't have to raise your voice when your presence finally speaks. 2 months later, the building no longer whispered cruelty. It hummed with something new. Respect. Not perfection, but effort. People still had bad days. People still made mistakes, but they cleaned up their own messes now. And they knew Helen's name. Not out of fear, out of gratitude. The Cultural Review survey came back with the highest score in Westbridge history. Turnover had dropped by 38%. New hires were being referred by current staff, not recruiters. And for the first time in its 20-year lease, the company voluntarily cleaned its own break rooms. But Helen, she was packing. One box, just the essentials. The old photograph Janice gave her, the folder labeled A1, and a letter she had written, but never sent to Julian. She sealed the box, closed the office blinds, and turned off the light. Then she walked a long hallway to the rooftop. One last time, Riley was waiting there. You sure about this? He asked. Helen looked up at the sky. I came here to disappear, but instead, I was seen. That was always the plan. No, she said. That was always the hope. She handed Riley a small envelope. Inside was the deed, signed. Transfer.to the Whitlock Foundation, a non-profit she created in secret. You're the acting director, she said. Me? Riley stammered. You're not just anything. Helen cut in. You're exactly what this place needs next. At 9 o'clock a.m., she sent one final company-wide email. Subject: from the cleaner. I once cleaned this building with bleach and silence. Now I leave it cleaner in ways that matter more. Not every stain is on the floor. Not every crack is in the wall. But kindness. Kindness fills them both. Don't forget the quiet ones. Don't forget me. Because I won't forget any of you. H.W. In the lobby. Employees gathered without being asked. Not because she told them to, because they wanted to. Helen walked through them slowly. No speeches. No applause. Just nods. Smiles. Tears. One young designer whispered, "Thank you for building something I want to stay in." Another added, "You're more than our foundation. You're our floor plan." At the door, Janice stood with a bouquet. Not roses, lavender, Helen's favorite. "You leaving forever?" Janice asked. Helen shook her head. "No one really leaves where they've been seen." Outside, the sun was soft, the breeze gentle. Helen stepped to the curb. A cab pulled up. Same driver who'd once laughed when she said she worked at a tower. This time, he opened the door. No questions asked. "Where to, ma'am?" Helen looked back once. The building. The people inside. The memories. Then she smiled. "Somewhere that needs sweeping." As the car drove off, Riley watched from the rooftop. He held the deed in one hand and in the other. The janitor's key Helen left behind, old, worn, still strong. He placed it in the new break room. In a glass case with a sign. The key that cleaned more than floors.